Well, it happened. And just my second watch of my Wolverine Deadpool Watch for the First Time series for the upcoming movie in July. I already find myself deep into the webs of the show that is the Fox X-Men universe timeline. My first video, all I did was watch X-Men Origins Wolverine, classic origin story, critiqued it as a film, didn't have to worry about anything else. So this movie starts with I will say, a stunning, beautiful scene in Japan at the end of World War II. And you can see the B-29 bombers coming in, and you realize, oh my goodness, they're about to drop the bomb, and Wolverine was there. We learned that it's Nagasaki, so it's the second atomic bomb, and it's a very cinematic scene. One of my biggest critiques of the first movie was how it just honestly didn't look good, especially for 2009. Like, there were some late 90s qualities to that movie, especially for how high the budget was. That was a big critique. This movie is beautiful, especially when you place it in 2013. Man of Steel also came out in 2013. Now, Man of Steel is like the best looking comic book movie ever made, so it's hard to compare it to that, but much better than the 2009 movies, so props to them for that. So you get that backstory scene at the end of World War II in Japan, and then we move into the present day. So I'm already doing jumping jacks or hula hoops or whatever the saying is in my head, because I know that the first movie, even though it's the fourth X-Men movie made, that's why it's X-Men Origins, so it's number one timeline. Then the three original X-Men movies take place before this one. Now, if you didn't watch my first video, I'm starting from scratch for all this. My goal is to be able to watch the Wolverine trilogy and the Deadpool movies so that I have enough backstory to be able to enjoy the MCU's proclaimed big comeback here at the end of July in 2024. Now, those of you that have watched this from the beginning have seen Wolverine on screen 3 more times than I have. So, for me, the storylines it ended with is what's going to happen with Captain Stryker. Wolverine's memories are lost. He doesn't know who he is other than his dog tag. He just lost his love, played by Lynn Collins. And what's up with his relationship with Sabretooth. And then Professor X rolls up and saves all the young mutants. None of that has anything to do with the Wolverine. It is the least tied-in sequel I have ever seen in my life. Literally not one character, not one storyline, none of that from X-Men Origins Wolverine is continued and explained in this movie. Now again, I know that there were 3 X-Men movies in between these in the timeline. I understand that. But this is marketed as, and it is still known as, the Wolverine trilogy. So there's got to be some type of story connection for people that just watch the trilogy, in my opinion. If you look at the Iron Man trilogy, you can watch Iron Man 1, 2, and 3 without seeing any other Avengers or MCU movies and understand what's going on. Now, you're going to be missing out on a lot of stuff from Avengers, but they kind of show it as backstory, quick clips in Iron Man 3. Same thing with the Captain America trilogy, same thing with the Thor trilogy. This, they're just like, oh no, this is 40 years later. None of that matters anymore. Now, before I dive too deep into things here, if you could like this video to help with the algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to my channel to check out the rest of my experience with these Fox movies. I feel like I just studied for a paper in college with the amount of research I had to do to try to understand all of this stuff. Okay, let's get back into watching the Wolverine for the first time. I'm going to address all the research I had to do after watching the movie to understand where we are. Because, again, the last thing I saw, we were in the early mid-70s, post-Vietnam. And then the next thing I know, I'm watching a movie set in 2013. So let's look at numbers. Like I did with the first movie. So, box office did about $40 million better than the first movie, where it ended at 415. So still, for big comic movies, not huge, but a a respectable showing. Let's see what the budget was. The budget was reported between 100 and 132 million. So the budget was less than the first one, but it looked better. So props on that. Very efficient. Now we got to see, of course. This is, I believe, Hugh Jackman's 5th, if not 6th. See, I'm not sure if he was in the, like, X-Men original reboot, the 2011 movie. I don't know if he was in that or not. So this is either his 5th or 6th appearance as the Wolverine already. Let's see what his salary was. So just like X-Men Origins Wolverine, it was $20 million. So shout out Hugh Jackman, still cashing those checks. Now the Rotten Tomato numbers also, like the box office, are much better than the first movie. We had a 71% from critics, which is certified fresh, and a 69% from audience. So still not a super high audience score, especially for how popular, at least I thought, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine was. I know at this point he's been in like 10 movies, so I just assumed people love him. So after that opening in Japan, that again I was very complimentary of, we started off with a bang, no pun intended. We get back to present day. Logan again has secluded himself back in the Canadian wilderness. This has happened a couple times in this series already. So this is when I got my first sense of how much I missed with the gap between these two movies. Because he keeps having dreams of Jean Grey, who I know the name, I know who she is, so I wasn't like, who is this? Like, I was like, okay, this is obviously someone from the X-Men movies. The backstory of their relationship I'm not up on, but like I know who she is. And he just keeps having dreams about he loved her and he had to kill her and all this. And I'm like, that's weird, because the last movie I watched, she was in love with the Lynn Collins characters. So again, she's just gone, and now we got another woman that he loved who is also dead. And apparently he had to kill her this time. And he gets located up in the woods by a mutant named Yukio. You'll have to forgive my pronunciation of some of these names if I don't nail them. Who says the guy who he saved in the opening Japan scene is dying, and he would like to see him to like have a closure and like repay his debt to Wolverine for saving him back when the bomb went off. So he goes to Japan, he sees this guy, epic hospital bed with the little pegs and whatnot that move as he moves. That was one of the cooler things I've seen in a movie for a while. The scene itself, I mean, pretty eye-roll villain. You see, you're in Japan and this white blonde woman is in there with a mask on. So like immediately you're like, okay, well this is the villain of the story. Like, she wouldn't be here any other reason to be here unless she was the villain. So like, all right, they're not even trying to surprise us with that. Logan learns that the guy wants to live forever, so he's offering to give Logan peace so he can actually die for once instead of never being able to be hurt. And Logan says no and all that, and then he ends up having another dream sequence with Jean, where they're about to, get it on a little bit, and then at the very end, the blonde woman sucks the life out of him, or like sucks his powers out of him, and you're led to believe that, oh, maybe he was still dreaming, but immediately I was like, nope, that definitely just happened. And then there's some fight scenes where he gets shot. Of course, you learn that it wasn't a dream because he doesn't heal. So for the first time on screen, we're seeing the Wolverine not be able to heal from a wound. And the rest of the movie really is just him trying to protect Yoshida's granddaughter, because they're trying to kill her because Yoshida left her the company and her father wants control of the company instead. So that's like the basic plot. Just judging this movie on the surface, along with the first in the trilogy, trying to ignore the universe madness, I wasn't really feeling it. I didn't think it was very good, to be honest with you guys. The story was pretty basic. I was never surprised at any point. There was multiple fight sequences where I'm like, can Wolverine even fight? Or is he just relying on his superhuman strength? Because there's a scene towards the end where it's a one-on-one versus the father, who's a trained samurai. Wolverine's getting worked. He gets like stabbed and chopped up 3 separate times in like a minute. Like he's just getting worked over, and it has nothing to do with not having his powers. He just don't have the combat skills. I'm like, I thought this dude was about it, which I still think he is. Like I just think they didn't nail the scene. I think they just botched it. You know what I mean? There were a couple callbacks, again, not plot-wise, but just character-wise to the first movie. Like him calling people bub, that was funny to see. But again, like he was a much better fighter in the first movie. Got worked on numerous occasions in the second one. The end fight scene, I thought I was just watching the end of Iron Man. It was like almost shot for shot the same thing. He loses his metal claws, but he ends up growing his organic claws out to like at the very end, which was cool. Like again, you knew that was gonna happen while watching it, but you know, it was a cool scene nonetheless. And then apparently in Days of Future Past, which comes out a year after this, he magically has his metal claws back. So that's just another sign of the fox cutting mess that this universe appears to be. And then the credit scene of the movie after he saves the granddaughter, who by the way I knew I recognized her. She is in Batman versus Superman 3 years after this, and plays Lex Luthor's assistant. There's the post-credit scene where Magneto and Professor X roll up on Logan in the airport, which is interesting because Logan thinks Professor X is dead because of the first X-Men trilogy events, and he thinks that Magneto doesn't have powers anymore, I believe. So he's like, how is this possible? What's going on? And they tell him that there's this new grave threat they want to save the world from. And that leads into Days of Future Past, the 2014 X-Men movie, which in itself became part of the full universe when it wasn't supposed to be. The 2011 movie was supposed to be a standalone, but they thought it did well, so they ended up doing this whole time travel universe instead. Holy crap. It's like if after Endgame, they made 10 more movies about returning the stones, and then by the end of it, you couldn't figure out what was real and what wasn't anymore. That's like the gist of what I'm getting, trying to follow all this. And it doesn't help that the actors get, the characters get recast all the time, and then the original actors show back up. Holy crap. I asked a couple of my friends when I wanted to do this, I said, hey, are the Wolverine movies like the other Marvel movies where you can watch just the solo movies without the universe and still know what was going on? And people are like, yeah, you'll be good. Like, from what I remember, you'll be fine. Complete lies. Not fine at all. Like, this is... You're either going to be completely lost and be like, this isn't even a sequel. This is just... Like, they might as well have called it Wolverine standalone movies. Standalone time with Wolverine. Also, obviously, Deadpool was not in this movie because, again, I said at the beginning, no characters were brought back in. So, unfortunately, this movie reeked of... had a couple characteristics which I don't think they even purposely did. So the first is just a cash grab sequel. It actually reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean 5, where it didn't have anything to do with the trilogy or Stranger Tides. It was just a random story that no one cared about to try to make money. This was a random story that had nothing to do with anything else. Even in the recap videos I watched about the rest of the universe, they straight up say, yeah, nothing that happens in this movie really affects anything. So it has that quality, and then the other quality it has is a movie that was made basically just so they could create a mid-credit scene to set up Days of Future Past. So they're like, hey, we got to set up why the Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is going to be in this movie because his character is the most popular and we don't want to recast him. So we have to give him another movie, and then in the credit scene we'll explain why he's about to be in this new set of X-Men movies where all the actors are younger, but he's the same. Holy... So for the grade, for the Wolverine, I want to be fair. I want to try to judge it just as one movie. I didn't like it. I thought the plot was weak, very easy, no surprises. Fight scenes were weak. Action was weak compared to the first one. Had like savage deaths, good action, good battles. And I gave that a C+ because the editing was crazy and the character motivations were very lacking. Man, I hate to do it because the movie looked so much better than the first one, but I want to say C-, but I think it's too generous. I think it's a B+. I would never watch this movie again. Again, it wasn't offensively bad, but I won't really remember anything from it other than that opening scene with the bomb. Now, I'm not too down on this whole watch series per se, because I can still see why people like the character. Those higher scores kind of surprise me. I'd be interested in the comments to hear from people that are like about this universe, what their thoughts are on the movie. So I'm on to Deadpool, 2016 Deadpool, which I actually am praying has nothing to do with any of this. Because after my experience of doing all that research, I could really benefit from just watching a classic origin story with some basic tie-ins to X-Men Origins. I know the movie's funny and it's rated R, so if it's just something completely different and I can just learn about some new characters moving forward, I will take that from Deadpool. And who knows, since he appears to be in every other movie, maybe Hugh Jackman will actually pop up in Deadpool and I'll get some more story continuation from all the characters that I never saw again after X-Men Origins. So I want to thank you for joining me. I'm sorry for how scatterbrained this whole thing was, but if you've seen the X-Men Universe movies, maybe you can appreciate how my video ended up being similar to the editing and craziness of the movies themselves. So I need to take a break from talking. Let me know in the comments what you think, and please check out my next video that I'll be posting about me watching 2016 Deadpool for the first time.